In the scorching heat of the Persian desert, you march alongside 30,000 men. Your feet are blistered, your throat burns with thirst, and the weight of your sarissa, an 18-foot spear, digs into your shoulder. You haven't seen your homeland of Macedon in 3 years. Yet when the young king with golden hair rides past on his black stallion Bucephalus, something stirs in your chest. This is Alexander, and you would follow him to the ends of the earth. For 13 years, the soldiers of Alexander the Great conquered an empire stretching from Greece to India, covering over 2 million square miles. They endured unimaginable hardships, witnessed wonders beyond imagination, and changed the course of human history. But what was it really like to be one of these legendary warriors? Today, we're going to walk in their sandals, fight in their battles, and discover the extraordinary reality of serving in history's most successful army. Your journey begins not on some distant battlefield, but in the rugged mountains of Macedon. Unlike the sophisticated city-states to the south, Macedon is a kingdom of warriors and farmers. If you're born into a noble family, you'll join the companion cavalry, the elite horsemen who form Alexander's personal guard. But most soldiers come from humbler backgrounds, recruited from farming communities across the kingdom. Training starts young. By 15, you're already learning the basics of warfare. The Macedonian phalanx isn't like anything the ancient world has seen before. Philip II, Alexander's father, revolutionized Greek warfare by creating a fighting formation that combines discipline with devastating offensive power. Your primary weapon is the sarissa, a pike so long it takes 2 hands to wield. In formation, the first 5 ranks hold their sarissas forward, creating a bristling wall of spear points that no enemy can penetrate. You train for hours every day, learning to move in perfect synchronization with your brothers in arms. One misstep, one broken formation, and the entire phalanx becomes vulnerable. But the sarissa isn't your only weapon. You carry a short sword called a xiphos on your hip for close combat. Your shield is smaller than those of traditional Greek hoplites, just 2 feet in diameter, because you need both hands free for the sarissa. Your armor consists of a bronze breastplate, greaves for your shins, and a distinctive Macedonian helmet with cheek guards. Training is brutal. You march 20 miles a day carrying 60 pounds of equipment. You learn to dig fortifications, set up camp, and forage for supplies. The Macedonian army doesn't rely on massive supply trains like other armies. You're expected to live off the land, which means you'll often go hungry. Perhaps most importantly, you learn loyalty. The Macedonian army operates on a bond between king and soldier that's almost sacred. When Philip II took the throne, he transformed a ragtag collection of hill fighters into the most professional military force in the Mediterranean. When his son Alexander inherits this army in 336 BCE, you're ready to conquer the world. It's 334 BCE, and you're about to cross into Asia. Alexander has secured his position in Greece, crushing rebellions in Thebes and Thessaly with ruthless efficiency. Now, with 35,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry, he's ready to invade the Persian Empire, the largest and wealthiest empire the world has ever known. As you cross the Hellespont, the narrow strait separating Europe from Asia, Alexander makes a symbolic gesture that sends chills down your spine. He's the first to leap from his ship, throwing his spear into Asian soil and claiming the continent as Spear One territory. This isn't just conquest, it's destiny. Your first major battle comes at the Granicus River. The Persian satraps have assembled an army of 40,000 men to stop you. As you form up in your phalanx, you watch Persian cavalry mass on the opposite bank. The river between you isn't deep, but the banks are steep and muddy, a perfect killing ground. Alexander doesn't hesitate. He leads the companion cavalry in a direct charge across the river. You watch in awe as your king crashes into the Persian lines, his white-plumed helmet making him an easy target. A Persian noble nearly kills him, shattering his helmet with an axe, but Clytus the Black, one of Alexander's bodyguards, saves his life at the last second. Then comes your turn. The order rings out, and the phalanx advances into the river. The water comes up to your chest. Your sarissa becomes unwieldy, and you struggle to maintain formation. Persian cavalry swarm around you, their horses crushing men beneath their hooves. Arrows rain down from above. This is nothing like training. This is chaos, terror, and the overwhelming stench of blood and death. But the phalanx holds. Slowly, methodically, you push forward. The Persians, magnificent on horseback, but poorly trained for infantry combat, begin to break. Within hours, the battle is won. You've lost only 100 men, while the Persians lost 4,000. The cities of Asia Minor begin opening their gates to Alexander. Over the following months, you march down the coast, liberating Greek cities from Persian rule. In each city, Alexander displays a political genius that matches his military talent. He respects local customs, preserves local governments, and only demands loyalty. The contrast with Persian rule couldn't be more stark. But not every victory comes on the battlefield. At Gordium, you witness one of Alexander's most famous moments. An ancient prophecy says whoever unties the impossibly complex Gordian knot will rule all of Asia. Scholars and wise men have failed for generations. Alexander studies the knot for a moment, then draws his sword and cuts it in half. The prophecy is fulfilled, just not in the way anyone expected. November 333 BCE. You're standing on a coastal plain near the town of Issus, and you're about to face Darius III himself, the king of kings, the ruler of the Persian Empire. His army numbers perhaps 100,000 men to your 35,000. The odds should terrify you, but you've learned to trust in Alexander's genius. Darius has made a critical mistake. Instead of using the open terrain of Syria, where his numerical advantage would be decisive, he's pursued Alexander's army and trapped himself between the mountains and the sea. The battlefield is only 2 miles wide, perfect for the Macedonian phalanx. As dawn breaks, you see the Persian army arrayed before you. Darius sits in a golden chariot in the center of his line, surrounded by his elite Greek mercenaries and Persian immortals. His cavalry masses on the wings. Behind them, thousands of lightly armed troops stretch as far as you can see. Alexander rides along the line, calling out to different units by name. He reminds you of victories past and promises glory ahead. When he reaches your section, he looks each man in the eye. In that moment, you'd die for him without hesitation. The battle begins with a cavalry clash on the right wing. Alexander, as always, leads from the front. You watch as the companion cavalry smashes into the Persian left, Alexander driving straight toward Darius. The Persian king has never seen anything like the coordinated fury of Macedonian cavalry. Meanwhile, your phalanx advances. The Persian Greek mercenaries are tough opponents. They fight with the same weapons and tactics you do. The fighting is savage and close. Men fall screaming around you. Your sarissa splinters and you draw your sword. The man next to you takes an arrow in the throat and goes down gurgling. But on the right wing, something extraordinary is happening. Alexander has broken through to Darius himself. The king of kings, seeing the Macedonian king cutting through his bodyguard like wheat, panics and flees. The sight of their king abandoning the battlefield destroys Persian morale. Within minutes, the entire army is in retreat. The Battle of Issus is a complete victory. You've captured Darius's camp, including his mother, wife, and children. Alexander treats them with such respect that Darius's mother eventually comes to think of him as a son. You've also captured the Persian baggage train, months of accumulated wealth that makes every soldier rich beyond imagination. But the greatest prize is still ahead, Egypt. Part 4, the march to Egypt and beyond. The year-long siege of Tyre tests you in ways no pitched battle ever could. This island city, half a mile offshore, seems impregnable. Other conquerors have bypassed it, but Alexander refuses. For 7 months, you work on building a causeway across the water while Tyrian ships harass you with flaming projectiles and arrows. You're a soldier, not an engineer, but now you spend your days hauling rocks and timber. Men die from drowning, fire, and exhaustion. The work seems endless. But when the causeway finally reaches the walls and your siege towers roll into position, the satisfaction is immense. When Tyre falls, you're part of the army that ensures the city never threatens anyone again. Alexander orders most of the male population executed and the women and children sold into slavery. It's brutal, but it sends a message that echoes across the Mediterranean. Egypt welcomes you as liberators. The Egyptians hated Persian rule, and Alexander is smart enough to present himself as their deliverer. You march to Memphis without fighting a single battle. There, you witness something that changes how you see your king. The Egyptian priests declare Alexander to be the son of Amun-Ra, their sun god. He's no longer just your king, he's becoming something divine. But the oddest moment comes at the Oracle of Siwa, deep in the western desert. Alexander makes a pilgrimage to this remote temple, and when he emerges, he's different, more confident, more convinced of his destiny. Rumors spread through the ranks about what the oracle told him, but Alexander never reveals the full truth. You begin to wonder if you're following a man or a god. It's in Egypt that Alexander founds the first of many cities bearing his name, Alexandria. You help survey the site, marking out streets and temples with barley flour when chalk runs out. This city will become one of the greatest in the ancient world, but right now it's just another construction project. Then comes the call to march again. Darius has assembled a new army in Mesopotamia, and Alexander won't rest until the Persian Empire is completely destroyed. October 1st, 331 BCE. You stand on a plain near the village of Gaugamela, and you're looking at the largest army ever assembled in ancient warfare. Darius has learned from his defeats. This time he's chosen his battlefield carefully, a flat plain perfect for his cavalry and chariots. His army might number 200,000 men. You have 47,000. Darius has leveled the ground and cleared all obstacles to give his scythed chariots, horrifying war machines with blades extending from their wheels, room to maneuver. You've been told these chariots can slice through a phalanx like a knife through cloth. The night before the battle, Alexander sleeps soundly while his officers pace with worry. When they wake him before dawn, he's refreshed and confident. "Why shouldn't I sleep?" he asks. "We've already won. Before we chased Darius across the countryside. Now he's waiting for us." As you form up in the pre-dawn darkness, you can see the Persian campfires stretching to the horizon. Darius has kept his men awake all night, fearing a surprise attack. You've had a full night's rest. It's a small advantage, but in war, small advantages accumulate. The battle begins with the charge of the scythed chariots. You've been trained for this. As they approach, your formation opens up, letting the chariots pass harmlessly through the gaps. Those that come too close are met with javelins and arrows. Not a single chariot reaches its target intact. Then Darius makes his move. His cavalry sweeps around both flanks, trying to envelop Alexander's smaller army. On the left wing, your comrades are pushed back, fighting desperately. Some Persian cavalry breaks through and heads straight for the Macedonian camp. But Alexander has anticipated everything. He's created a second line of troops specifically to deal with breakthroughs. Meanwhile, he's been watching Darius's lines, waiting for the perfect perfect moment. As the Persian cavalry extends to encircle him, a gap opens in their center, exactly where Darius sits on his chariot. You watch as Alexander leads the companion cavalry in his signature move, an angled charge straight at the enemy king. The companions crash into the Persian line like a thunderbolt, with the high paspists, elite infantry, following close behind. You're part of the phalanx that pushes forward to exploit the breach. The fighting is desperate. Persian cavalry charges into your flank, and you have to lock shields with your brothers just to survive. Men are crushed, trampled, and torn apart. Your world shrinks to the few feet around you. Block, thrust, stay in formation, don't break, don't break, don't break. Then, incredibly, it happens again. Darius sees Alexander cutting through his guard, coming straight for him, and the King of Kings flees the battlefield. This time, he doesn't stop running. He abandons his army, his empire, everything. With their king gone, Persian resistance collapses. The battle becomes a pursuit, then a slaughter. You chase fleeing enemies until your arms are too tired to lift your sword. When night falls, you've killed thousands, captured treasure beyond counting, and broken the Persian Empire forever. After Gaugamela, you expect to go home. You've conquered the Persian Empire. What more could Alexander want? But your king has different ideas. He wants to reach the edge of the world. You march into Babylon, where the gates open without resistance. The city is like nothing you've ever seen. Massive walls, hanging gardens, temples that touch the sky. The Babylonians treat Alexander as their legitimate king, grateful to be free of Persian rule. Then comes Persepolis, the Persian capital. For months, you've heard stories of its wealth, and they don't disappoint. The city's treasuries hold 120,000 talents of gold and silver. So much wealth that it takes 10,000 mules and 5,000 camels to carry it away. Every soldier receives a bonus that would make him rich back home. But something dark happens in Persepolis. Whether by accident or design, the city burns. The palaces of the Persian kings, symbols of 2 centuries of empire, go up in flames. Some say Alexander ordered it as revenge for the Persian invasion of Greece generations ago. Others say it was a drunken accident. You're never sure of the truth. The campaigns that follow blend together in your memory, an endless series of marches, sieges, and skirmishes as Alexander chases Darius across the eastern provinces. You cross deserts and mountains, fight in snow and scorching heat. The adventure you signed up for has become an ordeal. When Darius is finally found, he's already dead, murdered by his own nobles who hoped to win favor with Alexander. Instead, Alexander hunts down the murderers and executes them. He gives Darius a royal funeral and declares himself the legitimate successor to the Persian throne. You're no longer conquering an empire, you're becoming part of it. This is when things start to change. Alexander begins wearing Persian dress and expects his men to perform proskynesis, the Persian custom of bowing before the king. To you and your fellow Macedonians, this is outrageous. You didn't fight to replace one Eastern despot with another. Tension grows between Alexander and his old companions. The worst moment comes at Maraconda. After days of heavy drinking, Alexander gets into an argument with Clitus the Black, the man who saved his life at Granicus. Clitus accuses Alexander of abandoning Macedonian values and thinking himself a god. In a drunken rage, Alexander grabs a spear and kills his old friend with his own hands. The remorse is immediate and devastating. Alexander locks himself in his tent for 3 days, refusing food and water. When he finally emerges, he's a changed man, more withdrawn, more suspicious, convinced that the gods are punishing him. You've been marching for 7 years when you crossed the Hindu Kush mountains into India. You're 30 years old now if you've survived this long. Many of your original companions are dead or invalided home. The army you march with is half Macedonian, half Persian, and other Eastern peoples. India is unlike anything you've encountered. The heat is oppressive, the monsoon rains endless. You fight enemies who use war elephants, massive beasts that terrify even the bravest cavalry horses. At the Battle of Hydaspes, you face King Porus and his 200 elephants. The battle is fought in a thunderstorm, with rain so heavy you can barely see. Alexander leads a daring night crossing of the river, while you and the main army create a diversion. The fighting is savage. Elephants trample men into the mud, but your sarissas prove effective. Strike the trunk, and even an elephant will retreat. When Porus is finally defeated, Alexander is so impressed by the Indian king's courage that he not only spares his life, but makes him an ally. It's a pattern you've seen before. Alexander's genius isn't just military, it's political. But you've reached your limit. At the Hyphasis River, when Alexander announces he wants to march further east to the edge of the world, the army refuses. It's the only time in 13 years that Alexander's men have told him no. You watch as your king rages and pleads, locked in his tent for 3 days hoping his men will change their minds. But you won't. You've been marching for 8 years. You've crossed deserts and mountains, fought in battles beyond counting, seen comrades die by the thousands. You're tired, homesick, and you've had enough. Finally, Alexander accepts defeat. The army will turn back, but the return journey proves more deadly than the advance. Alexander chooses to return through the Gedrosian Desert, a wasteland that even the Persians avoided. Why he does this, nobody knows. Perhaps he wants to prove he can survive where others failed. Perhaps he's punishing the army for refusing to march further east. Perhaps he's lost in his own megalomania and can't accept that nature has limits. The desert crossing is hell on earth. You march through sand dunes under a merciless sun. Water is scarce. Food runs out. You watch men drop from heat stroke and exhaustion. When a small supply of water is found, it's rationed so strictly that men fight over drops. At one point, someone brings Alexander a helmet full of water. In front of the entire army, he pours it into the sand, saying he won't drink unless everyone can drink. The casualties are catastrophic. Of the 75,000 people who enter the desert, soldiers, wives, children, camp followers, perhaps 20,000 die. It's the single greatest disaster of Alexander's campaigns, worse than any battle. You survive, but barely. When you finally stagger out of the desert, you're a skeleton wrapped in sun-baked skin. The army that reaches Babylon in 323 BCE is nothing like the force that crossed into Asia 13 years earlier. You're older, harder, scarred in body and soul. Many of your friends are dead. The loot you've accumulated would make you wealthy back home, but Macedon seems like a distant dream. Alexander seems different too. He drinks heavily. He's paranoid, executing generals on the slightest suspicion of treason. He's planning new campaigns, to Arabia, to North Africa, possibly west to Italy. The conquest will never end because Alexander can't imagine life without war. In June 323 BCE, after a heavy drinking session, Alexander falls ill. For days he lies in his palace while you and 20,000 other veterans wait outside for news. The fever won't break. His strength fades. Finally, on June 10th, Alexander the Great dies at age 32. When his officers ask who should inherit his empire, Alexander's last words are, "To the strongest." Within hours, his generals are already maneuvering for power. The empire he built will tear itself apart in decades of war. You return to Macedon a different person. The boy who enlisted in Alexander's army no longer exists. You've seen more of the world than most men dream of, from the Adriatic to the Indus, from the snows of the Hindu Kush to the deserts of Egypt. You fought in battles that will be studied for thousands of years. You helped conquer an empire larger than any before it. You witnessed the birth of cities that will become centers of learning and culture. You were part of something that changed human history, but the cost was immense. Of the 35,000 men who crossed into Asia with you, only a fraction returned. The rest lie in unmarked graves across 3,000 miles of territory. You've seen friends torn apart by arrows, trampled by elephants, killed by disease and exhaustion. You've killed men whose names you'll never know, for reasons that seem increasingly unclear. Alexander's empire didn't survive him, but his legacy did. The Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged from the wars of the successors spread Greek culture across the ancient world. The city of Alexandria became a beacon of learning. The fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures created a cosmopolitan civilization that laid foundations for the Roman Empire. But for you, these historical consequences matter less than personal ones. You've lost years of your life to war. You've missed births, marriages, deaths. The home you return to doesn't feel like home anymore. You're a stranger in your own land, haunted by memories of deserts and battles. Other veterans feel the same way. You gather in taverns to share stories that nobody else can understand. You remember Alexander not as the legendary conqueror, but as the young man who led from the front, who knew your name, who made you believe you were part of something greater than yourself. Being a soldier of Alexander the Great meant experiencing the full spectrum of human experience compressed into 13 extraordinary years. You witnessed both the heights of human achievement and the depths of suffering. You helped build an empire and watched it crumble. The men who followed Alexander weren't supermen or mythical heroes. They were farmers, craftsmen, and shepherds who became professional soldiers. They endured unimaginable hardships through discipline, camaraderie, and faith in their extraordinary leader. They conquered the known world, but in doing so, they lost something too: their youth, their innocence, their simple dreams of home. That was the true cost of building history's greatest empire. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what historical topic you'd like us to explore next. Until then, remember, history isn't just about the victors who write it, but the countless individuals who lived it.